Director of Recreation Resources Service. And I'm going to review just kind of a few notes for our session today and then turn it over to Ann Savage. So first of all, as far as communication, the chat window will be monitored. So if you have any questions, just pop the question in there and I'll moderate those and share the questions with our speakers when we get to that point. So just chime in there with your questions. If you have a question that you don't want like everybody to see, you can send one directly to me and I can ask that. So that is available also. There is a live transcript available. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little live transcript button. So if you click that, you can have subtitles displayed on there. And finally, the workshop evaluation will be shared at the end of the session. As we approach the end, I'll put a link in the chat window for everybody to respond to that. And please do. I mean, part of it is we are using attendance for CEUs, but we want your feedback and want to hear, how we can improve our workshops, what you like, what you didn't like, so we can improve future workshops and add to anything new that you might want to hear about. And I'm sure I've left something off, but we'll get back to it. So now I'll turn it over to Ann Savage, the Tourism Extension Specialist here at NC State University.
Thanks, Charlene, and thanks for being here. And yes, if we left anything off or you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat so we can address them and make sure that this workshop is as seamless as possible for you. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I'm really excited about the workshop that we put together. And before I introduce our keynote speaker, Brett, I just wanted to mention that perhaps some of the conversations we have will be focused. We have a kind of a wide variety of our audience. And so some of the conversations might be more focused on destinations, but the way that we view destinations is a place that people want to go, whether visitors or residents in a community. And so we all work the way we do in the pursuits that we do to create spaces of joy and meaning for those in our communities. And we do that through developing programs and connections. And so just thinking of, even if it's not an example that specifically works within your realm, thinking about how it translates into the work you do in the community. And hopefully we'll all walk away today with some great ideas and new and exciting initiatives that we want to start. And we're happy to assist with that moving forward. So with that, I'm going to introduce our keynote, who's going to give us all sorts of inspiration today. Brett Heising. Brett brings a lifetime of experience to his role as founder and CEO of Brett Approved, home to brettapproved.com, a travel and entertainment website for anyone with a physical disability or mobility challenge. A successful journalist and PR pro turned tech entrepreneur, Brett is a global speaker on the subjects of diversity and inclusion, entrepreneurship, accessible travel trends, and more. He was a member of the Phoenix Business Journal's 40 Under 40 class of 2015, serves on the board of United Cerebral Palsy of Central Arizona, and he's active in the Phoenix startup community. Brett built Brett Approved because whether you're traveling around the corner to meet friends for coffee or around the world for a trip of a lifetime, you should have the accessibility, information, and services you need to travel confidently. And I know we're about to hear more about that. He helps corporations understand and market effectively to consumers with disabilities. His team audits company-wide systems, processes, policies, and marketing materials to ensure that consumers with disabilities and reduced mobility are thought about and adequately represented in corporate culture, ad campaigns, marketing collateral, etc. In summary, he helps able-bodied people become comfortable talking about disability by making the uncomfortable comfortable. A proud graduate of The Ohio State University, I couldn't leave that out for Brett because we talk about it every time we talk, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism with a specialization in public relations and a minor in political science. Brett lives in Phoenix, Arizona with his wife, Claudia, and his 3-year-old, maybe a little older now, golden retriever, Handsome George. And with that, I will pull up Brett's slides and we can get.
Perfect. All right. Well, it is absolutely wonderful to be here with each of you. Thank you so much, Ann, for that wonderful introduction. I really do appreciate it. And I want to thank each of you for taking time out of your day to spend time with me and spend time in this valuable workshop. The greatest gift we can give one another is to examine life from a perspective that's different from our own. And that's what we're going to do today. We're gonna make sure that when you guys leave here, you have a baseline knowledge of travelers and people with disabilities and how to interact with them. You understand the sort of the history of the disability movement, and you understand that everybody, regardless of where we fit on the spectrum of physical ability, deserves to be treated with dignity. And as Ann said, I've been privileged to share this message all around the world. Obviously, with COVID, things are a little bit different. My only regret is that I'm not with each of you in person today, but I feel as if we are all together and we are all connected. And again, thank you so much in advance for your time and attention. So, people always ask me, why did I start Bread Approved? I mean, I was a very successful journalist, very successful PR pro. What motivated me to start Bread Approved? We're going to answer that question with a very short video. You'll note this video was made in 2011, I think. And so some of the stats are a little outdated, and we'll cover some updated stats here in a moment. But I really wanted, to share this video with you because it really does a really good job of encapsulating why I left, the safety of corporate America to take that entrepreneurial journey. So with that, Ann, go ahead and cue up the video if you would.
My name is Brett Heising, and I live life on wheels. But just because I'm sitting down doesn't mean I'm sitting still. About a year ago, I was in San Francisco on business, and it was my job to make the hotel reservations. I called the hotel to be sure my room would have a roll-in shower. No problem, sir. We've got you covered, they said. Great. I called again a couple days before we arrived to confirm. But when we got there, you guessed it, there was no roll-in shower. I explained the gravity of the situation to the hotel manager, and they found me a room all right, in a different hotel. Needless to say, I was pissed. What if there was a travel and entertainment website where people with disabilities could review hotels and restaurants and book accessible accommodations? That was my aha moment. But just to be sure, I did some research, and I found out that there are 54 million people in this country with permanent physical disabilities or some type of mobility challenge, and we spend roughly $13.6 billion annually on travel and entertainment. That's when I knew I had to do this. The world needs Bread Approved. No more showing up to your hotel and discovering that it won't work. No more eating at just a few restaurants because they're the only ones you know of that are accessible. No more going to a venue and being surprised by less than stellar accessible accommodations. BreadApproved.com is a standalone website that will help us do everything from book travel to decide if the new bar across town is a place we want to meet friends after work. You'll be able to quickly decide if a destination meets your needs based on its Bread score, a numerical rating system you help create and influence with each review. To make Bread Approved a reality, I need you. Together, we're going to change the world one review at a time and help people, regardless of their disability, travel confidently. Our journey starts today. Let's do this.
Thank you, Ann. I hope that gives you a sense of why I started the company. And I'll share with you, when my team and I did that video and I shared it with my parents, I said, hey, Mom, what do you think of the video? And she said, Brett, did you have to say the word "bist"? She was upset. And I said, yeah, Mom, when I thought about that experience, upset just didn't cover it. So I had to convey that emotion. And another funny story, I was given a similar lecture overseas pre-COVID, and it was in Switzerland, and I played the video. And in some cultures in Europe, that word means drunk. So everybody was like, oh my, you were drunk. And I was like, no. So, some things don't translate, but that is a story. That story happens all too often, and whether I was booking the hotel reservation, whether my executive assistant was booking the hotel, corporate travel, it just happened way too often. And so I thought to myself, this is an objection that I'm tired of overcoming. There's got to be a better way. And so I left I left my job, and I remember sitting my wife down and sitting Claudia down and saying, hey, I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to start a company to help people with disabilities travel confidently. And she looked at me and she was kind of, taken aback for a second. And she said, well, everything you do, you excel at, so go figure it out. And so I want to always, every presentation I give, I always mention Claudia, because without her love and support, I would not be here today, and I would not be making the difference that I am. And so you see here our purpose, right? It's very, very straightforward. Bread Approved exists because everyone, regardless of their physical disability and the physical challenges, deserves to travel confidently and live the life they've imagined. That is, if you guys take nothing else as attendees, if you take nothing else away from our time together today, it really boils down to treating people with disabilities with personal dignity and the respect and kindness. I think all too often in society, particularly perhaps lately, kindness is viewed as a weakness. I don't think so. I think kindness is a strength. And what I want each of you to take away is, just like Ann said in the beginning of our time together, all of this, perhaps might not be germane to what you do on a daily basis in regards to your professional endeavors. But I want you to think about, what can you do? What can you do to be as welcoming as possible? What can you do to treat everyone you meet with dignity and respect? What can you do to be an emissary of one, an emissary of love and compassion? And so that's the lens that I want to view things through today. And so, Ann, if you go ahead. So it's very important to me to talk about disability in an overarching way, because I think one of the challenges with disability, one of the challenges that I run into when I was in Silicon Valley raising money for my company, the investors, most of whom, 99% of whom were white, able-bodied, cisgendered males in their late 60s, early 70s, they could not identify with disability. They just couldn't do it, because fortunately for them, it had never been something they had to worry about. And they would always tell me, Brett, we love you, we love what you're doing, but it's a niche market. And my takeaway, or what I always told them, regardless if they invested in us or not, is that it's not a niche market. And this was put together by the American Institutes of Research, I believe in 2018. And it just kind of illustrates the power of the market. US adults, they've got updated stats. So 64 million people in this country live with a disability, according to the research they've done. That's 1 in 5. 1 in 5. And 70% of those folks have a hidden disability, right? They have a disability, and we're going to talk more about that on the panel later this afternoon. But they have a disability that is not visible to the naked eye, right? And so if we look at, if we continue looking down there, look at the amount of disposable income by market segment. I mean, that is unbelievable. That is unbelievable. And then if we go to the right, discretionary income. And so I think there's a misnomer that folks with disabilities don't have money to spend, and some of us don't. But the important thing to remember is that some of us do. And we are very loyal consumers, very sticky, very loyal consumers, right? So if we find a hotel that works, we're going to pay a little bit more because it meets our needs. If we have, if there's a destination with a park that's accessible for our child with a disability, we're going to go there. We're going to go there. And that is a point of pride for not only the community members, but it's a marketing and PR material for your DMOs. It's a marketing and PR material for the park itself. And later on in our time together today, we'll talk about the typical Bread Approved consumer. In fact, I might just mention it now. The typical Bread Approved consumer isn't somebody with a disability themselves. It's a mom with children. Usually the typical pre-COVID, the typical Bread Approved consumer who would book travel through us was a mom in her mid-30s. She typically had 3 kids, 2 of whom were able-bodied, or what we might call typical, quote unquote typical, 1 of whom had a disability, right? And the mom did not want the child with a disability to miss out on anything. Did not want, their child to miss out on going to Disney World, or going to you know, probably the coolest trip that we did was for a couple of twins. I think they were 12 at the time, and their grandparents wanted to take them on a safari to Kenya. And they said, "Do you think you can make that happen?" And I said, "Of course." Not knowing, you know, my team and I did not know at that time how difficult it would be to find a wheelchair accessible van in Kenya, but we did it, right? We did it. And so again, it's all about from a disability perspective, travel is all about making sure that everybody gets those same opportunities. And I really want you to take the information that's on this infographic, and I really want you to think about that the next time you're in a meeting and says, you know, somebody says, "Well, why do we have to worry about it? Why do we have to worry about it?" Because it will have positive effects on your community beyond the scope of what you're doing. You know, all of the accessibility things that we do, all of the initiatives that we do, they all kind of work together, and they all kind of lead us to the better world that each of us is working toward. So, Anne, if you want to go ahead and hit the next slide. And so you'll see that I have up here 61 million Americans, and that's 2010 census data. So the infographic I shared a moment ago is a little newer. But the thing that I want you to focus on here is, again, baby boomers, right? 77 million baby boomers in this country, and probably more by now, have a combined $2 trillion to spend. And again, we often don't think of disability in terms of naturally aging, right? Each of us, if we're lucky enough and we live long enough, eventually we're going to need assistance. You know, our bodies, you know, the body is an amazing machine, right? It's the only thing we can think of that gets stronger the more we use it, right? I mean, you know, sometimes you're rolling into the gym, you really don't want to be there, but you always feel better leaving the gym than you did when you showed up, right? And so I think for many of us, I certainly don't. I navigate the world, as you saw in the video, I navigate the world in a polished titanium manual wheelchair. And so I'm very attuned to that. But many of us, you know, take the bodies that we're in for granted. And so another key message I want you to take away today is really be mindful and really be thankful for that body that you're in. And I don't ever want to be macabre or you know, down or dreary, but enjoy that body while you've got it. Because if something happens to you, and let's say, you know, let's say tomorrow, you know, something less than ideal happens to you and you find yourself in a wheelchair, you're still the same person, right? You're still the same person. You're still going to want to do the same. You're still going to have the same hobbies. You're still going to want to take your kids to the park. But all of a sudden, you might not have to worry about accessibility for them, but you have to worry about accessibility for you, right? And so again, we never know when the body that we're in is going to betray us. We never know at the flip of a switch when we're going to have to, on a very personal, intimate level, really become acquainted rather quickly with disability. So the point again, and I tend to repeat things that I really want you to remember, but the point that I want you to remember is to be thankful, to approach each day with gratitude, and know that it could drop, you know, change on a dime. And if it does, again, you're still going to be the same person. Why do I mention that? Because nobody with a disability, or most people, I should say, and we'll talk about this later in our time together, most people do not define themselves by their disability, right? If you paid attention to my intro or my bio that Anne read, right? It was all this stuff. He's an entrepreneur. He's a husband. He's a proud Buckeye, even though we lost to our rival last week, which I'm still getting over. But all this stuff, what I didn't say is, oh yeah, I have cerebral palsy, right? I mean, because you'll figure that out. You'll figure that out. But the reason I don't lead with that is because it doesn't define me. You know, you know, the greatest joys in my life are being an uncle, being a husband, being a son, and being a mentor. And disability, you know, makes me who I am, but it does not and will never define me. So if we get back to the slide here, we've got all these 36 million people over the age of 65 are mobility impaired. So again, not a niche market. 1.3 billion people worldwide, according to the United Nations, live with a disability, right? So again, not a niche market. Go ahead, Anne. Thank you. and again, this is very important to me, and this was pre-pandemic, so that's very, very important to remember. There's a wonderful nonprofit organization out of Chicago called Open Doors Organization. Done a lot of work with them. They do a ton of work in the airline space, making sure that airlines are educated on the Air Carrier Access Act, which actually predated the ADA, which we're going to talk about in a second. And I think it's like every 5 years or something to that effect, they do a survey. And so 27 million Americans with disabilities took 81 million trips and spent $58.7 billion. And that's not, with the people who travel with us, that's just on the traveler with a disability themselves. And so if you think about that, most of the time, unless I'm traveling for business, I'm with somebody. I'm with my parents, I'm with my wife. And so we only go to hotels and destinations that are accessible, right? We're never going to go stay at a hotel that isn't accessible, because why would I put myself through that? So when you're thinking about destinations, when you're thinking about accessibility from a Parks and Rec standpoint, very, very important that you remember that people with disabilities almost never travel alone, and we want to make sure that everybody has a good experience, right? And so again, it goes back to what I shared earlier. We are very sticky, loyal consumers. Go ahead, Em. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the history of disability. And this isn't, the history of disability, like anything else, is very, very complicated. So this is simply to let you know that being treated with the dignity that I've mentioned already, it wasn't always the case. It just simply was not always the case. And so we know as a society that the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed in 1964, and that helped, as it should have, people of color, and that had a tremendous positive impact. But people with disabilities were completely left out of that legislation, So as you see here, Section 504 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act was the first disability civil rights law to be enacted in the United States. It prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in programs that receive federal funding assistance, and set the stage for the Americans with Disabilities Act, right? So you think about, what I want you to think about is not that legislation itself. What I want you to think about is the year that happened, 1973. That's nuts. I mean, that is people with disabilities were not thought about in a civil rights capacity until 1973. This next bullet, people always ask me, why do you include this next bullet? Because I was born in 1975. My goodness gracious, am I old, right? Holy cow. And so this legislation is very, very important to me, because it allowed me to get a mainstream education. I mean, I always tell people, and you've probably heard me say this in our pre-meetings, listen, my body doesn't work as well as I wish it did. I'll be totally upfront about that. But my mind is Jesse Owens. We don't carry around standardized test scores in our back pocket, but if we did, I'd probably win, right? And so without this landmark piece of legislation that happened in 1975, I would not have been able to get a mainstream education. I would not have been able to secure an academic scholarship to Ohio State, because I would have probably been not able to attend classes in a meaningful way. And so again, this is very important to me, because without it, I wouldn't be here today. And so then the last bullet here, it kind of harkens back to the Section 504 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act. That wasn't enacted until 1977. And the only reason that was enacted was because of people like Ed Roberts, who's considered the father of the independent living movement. Ed Roberts was born, I believe, in 1939 and contracted polio at the age of 16. As a result of contracting polio, he utilized an iron lung. And he attended high school until his senior year. In Northern California, he attended high school by telephone. He then went to community college and got accepted to UC Berkeley, one of the best schools in the country. And then when they realized he had a disability, they said, hey, we're not going to let you in here. He was very persistent, and he said, yes, you are. And so again, think about that. Think about that timeline. 1977 was not that long ago. And Ed ultimately graduated with a master's degree in political science, I believe, in 1964. But again, without people like Ed Roberts, I would not have been able to attend Ohio State. And so I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to people like him for making the life that I enjoy and that I've worked so hard for possible. So we could go on, but we won't. I just want to give you a baseline of how hard we've fought to have these conversations. So go ahead. All right. And this is the coup de grace, if you will. In 1990, President George W. Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act. You can read that. I will not read that for you, but that is the absolute. I mean, so many people work so hard for that. And I attended my freshman year at Ohio State was 1994, so they were still trying to implement everything and get rocking and rolling. And I can tell you, one of the reasons I take so much pride in being a Buckeye, outside of the fact that it's an outstanding academic institution, is because I had to work very, very hard to navigate campus. I mean, yes, everything was accessible technically, but I remember rolling into classes and I was using delivery ramps that were like this, that were metal in some cases. And so you can imagine trying to roll up a metal ramp in the winter that's covered in ice, you know, but I did it, right? You can imagine, you know, rolling across the oval at Ohio State and getting frostbite, right? Because you're, you know, no matter how thick or heavy your gloves are, you know, when they're saturated with water, it just doesn't matter. So that's why I take so much pride in that, because it was an unmitigated pain and I did it. And in all my time at Ohio State, I think I saw 2 other people in chairs. I mean, think about that. It's one of the largest student bodies in the country. I'm sure there were more than that, but it was so difficult physically, so challenging physically, that a lot of people, unfortunately, just gave up. I did not give up. That's not in my heart. I'm a fighter, and I push through. But it's not easy, and that's the point. It shouldn't have been as difficult as it was, but it was. And so what I want you to take away from the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, is that yes, we should as a society be very grateful for it, and I am. But it is not an aspirational thing. It is not something that's, hey, if this is ADA compliant, we're in it to win it, we're good to go. No, it's a bare minimum, right? So when you're designing parks and recreational spaces, or you're working at the DMO and you're showcasing accessible features, think about life beyond, or think about those things beyond the ADA. Think about it, okay, so this is, you know, technically ADA compliant, but what can I do to make it even better? What can I do to make it even better? Because what I try to do is to get people to think beyond the ADA and start thinking about universal design, right? What can we do to make this better? And a lot of, you know, I do a lot of lecturing in the hotel space, and a lot of hoteliers think that, you know, if they make something ADA compliant, that it's going to be very expensive. You know, it might be, let's be real. But chances are you can do things within your communities, within your DMOs, within your parks, to make them accessible that don't cost a lot of money at all, right? Let's think about, for example, a hotel room. You know, if you know you're going to have a guest in a power chair, simply remove some extraneous furniture so that there's a little bit more room to maneuver. One of my favorite things, I did an ADA audit years ago, and it was like a 50-page audit. It was like a 3-day situation. And one of my favorite things was there were trash cans in front of the elevators, and people with disabilities, as well as, you know, guests who had strollers could not, you know, the moms and the dads could not access the button. And so I'm talking to the GM. He's like, "What am I going to do?" I'm like, "Man, listen, we're not splitting atoms here. Just move the trash can. So he literally moved the trash cans like 6 inches to the left, and all of a sudden that's an accessible elevator button, right? So I don't want you to be intimidated by ADA compliance or intimidated by the thought of making it better. It's really thinking about what can you do at a granular level. And so go ahead, Ann. All right. We are going to play, before we play this video, it's a little long, it's 7 minutes, but I want you to get a sense for who you're doing this for. I want you to get a sense for, you know, people with disabilities who are going to visit your parks, who are going to visit your destinations. This is, and you'll hear this in the video, this is Cody Mendenhall, and she is a ardent supporter of Bread Approved. She and her mom Jen and her dad John, they just love Bread Approved. They help us out quite a bit with different things. She lives in Colorado, and every couple of years they come down to Arizona, and we spend some time together because they matter to me. And so the reason I'm showing this video is, again, we've got to get beyond the statistics of disability. I want you to see the person. And Cody has CP. She's nonverbal, as you'll see, but she uses a device that helps her speak. And she is a brilliant, brilliant young woman. And so take note of her shirt, right? Kind is cool. You're damn right. You're damn right. Kind is cool. And so enjoy the next 7 minutes. I apologize for my on-camera performance, but I really want you to focus on Cody and what she goes through just to stay at a hotel.
Hey, this is Brett coming at you from the Westin La Paloma in Tucson, Arizona, the old Pueblo as it's known. We are in room B236, and I'm very pleased to have a very special guest with me today, Ms. Cody Elizabeth Mendenhall. Cody, how are you? Boom! She's good. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the accessibility of this room. And as I look around here, all in all, I think it looks pretty good. We've got a couple beds right here. We'll notice that one is pushed against the wall. Oops. You got something else to say, kiddo? No? Well, we've got a bed here pushed against the wall. And this is a really good example of making a room work for you, right? So we can see when we look at this bed that it's supposed to be square with the headboard, but some guests, like Cody, need a little bit more back support. So it's a simple fix. Dad just uses a little muscle and boom, bed's against the wall. Done deal. Guess who naps like a queen? Cody, right? And so the point is, you got to make the room work for you. So we're going to, cameraman extraordinaire, we're going to kind of mosey on over. And we've got mom here, Jen Mendenhall. Pan over to Jen, Matt.
Hello. Hi.
All right. There is, in fact, a party in room B236. So we're going to go in here and take a look at the shower. And what I like about this shower is the fact that it is a true zero entry. That is to say, there's no threshold whatsoever. And we've got a nice wide teak bench right here, which is super cool. And you can see Miss Cody demoing the true nature of this roll-in shower. She is, in fact, in it to win it. And the maneuverability is really, really easy to do, too, because of this floor. It looks to be some kind of tile or faux wood of some variety. And then, of course, down here under the vanity, we've got a separate stool, which is nice to store towels on and things like that. And then, of course, another nice thing, we've got the towel bar at the appropriate height, which is super cool. And I'm going to head out here. If you want to follow me out. Excellent job. You can see Cody made it through there, no problem whatsoever. Well, I didn't want to say anything here. And I asked Cody before we began filming
said, hey, what's your favorite feature about this hotel? So without further ado, my good friend and new assistant, what do you like most about this hotel room? She likes the barn door, ladies and gentlemen, and let me show you why. Matt, you're gonna disappear for the briefest of moments. Oh my gosh, where's Matt going? Boom! It's very easy to use. I'm using one hand. And what's nice about this too is if you have dexterity issues, right? You just lock the brakes. You can use a knuckle, and it's very easy to use. So Cody can use it, I can use it, everybody can use it, which is the key in terms of accessibility. Now, I asked Cody, I said, what do you want me to do in this review? And she said, jump on the bed. So we're about to get nuts. All right. Let's see how this shakes out, Joe. I'm gonna use this one. All right. Looks to be flush and get firm, which is nice. All right. Oh my gosh. We're close.
Yeah.
Oh, this is delightful. Really nice. You coming up here? You getting over here? We're gonna bounce. All right. So this is how short I am. Look. Neither one of us, our feet don't touch the ground. We might need parachutes to get out of here. Who am I kidding? I might be spending the night. But this is a very comfortable bed. Miss Cody, you feel pretty good? Comfortable bed? Excellent. Excellent. And for those of you watching this, Claudia is off camera and has in fact moved my wheelchair out of the shot. So now I have to beg for my chair back. But if I could have the chair back, that'd be delightful. That's what she does, John. She just takes the chair away and then I'm trapped. Right. All right, this is a very comfortable bed. It does seem to me to be a little bit high, but not at all difficult to get in and out of. And what I like about this is you've got this table right here, which for me is a good bracing point. So see what I did was, look at that. Excellent assist, Jen. Don't worry. This even pulls out. But what I like about this table is you're able to really, brace yourself. And I put all my weight on my right hand, and then I was able to pivot onto the bed. So again, this is room B236 at the Westin La Paloma in Tucson, Arizona. Such a pleasure to have my special guest, Cody, with me. We're gonna sign off. So let's give everybody a big smile, Cody. There we go. And thanks so much for being a part of this video. And let's take a look at this real quick.
She said you could pull that stand out.
Oh, wow.
Then you have another.
Yeah. It's like an expandable night table, which is really cool. An expandable bedside table. Oh, I could get a little dicey with the fingers there.
Cody, could you high five or something? Say thank you.
All right. Boom. All right. Well, this is Brett signing off. Cameraman extraordinaire Matthew. Thank you for your handiwork as always. Jen, John, Claudia. Pan the room, Matt. Slow pan. Slow pan. Oh, brainwave from Claudia. Love it. Take care. And as always, keep rolling.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Every time I see that, I get a little emotional because that is why I do what I do right there. I mean, as much as I enjoy spending time with each of you, and it is a true privilege and pleasure. Cody and the young folks like her are why, as an entrepreneur, I work probably 70 hours a week, right? Because she deserves every opportunity to live the life that she imagined. And the thing about Cody that always resonates with me is just how sharp she is. Just how, I mean, she doesn't miss a beat. she's growing up quick. I think she's a sophomore in high school these days. And she has plans, as she should, to go to university, and she's going to do amazing things. And so when you're having hard days at the office, when you're having budget discussions about accessibility, I want you to remember Cody. That's who you're doing it for. That's who you're fighting for, right? In your own unique, special way, that is who you're fighting for. And again, disability is not statistics. Disability is people, right? And people matter. And we have to demonstrate that. We have to demonstrate that every opportunity we get. And sometimes we're having a bad day, like I get it. But every time we extend compassion to people, every time we give a little bit of ourselves, you'll notice when you give of yourself, you feel great, right? You feel great. So again, please do me a favor, always remember who you're fighting for, who you're working for in terms of accessibility. It's people like Cody. And so, Anne, if you go ahead and go to the next slide. So, if you want to go back one real quick. So I want everybody to think about, how we or how you might interact with people with disabilities. As human beings, we're hardwired to kind of, for lack of a more eloquent phrase, to kind of fear what we don't understand. And for many of us, we don't understand disability. And even those of us who have a disability, we can be so preoccupied with our own challenges that we don't think beyond our disability. So I do hotel training for frontline staff, because frontline staff in the hospitality industry, it's one of the few industries where you have the least amount of experience and you're making the most and the least amount of money. And they go, hey, you know what? You're going to be the first point of contact for our customers, right? And so when I train hotel staff, and what happens is there's a ton of turnover, right? Because you find out really quickly if you have a heart for service, if you have a heart for hospitality, and if you don't, you quit and you find something else to do. And if you do, chances are you're going to get promoted to back of house. So there's a ton of turnover, especially too with COVID. And so when I do the hotel trainings, I always talk about making sure that we monitor our own attitude, tone, and demeanor, right? I mean, body language is so critically important, Words matter. What we say matters. I can tell you that when I travel, I roll in to a hotel, and people, the front desk staff are almost always surprised to see somebody in a wheelchair, especially when I travel by myself. And I can tell if they're nervous. I can tell if you're putting all your weight on the back of your right foot and you're trying to get away. I can tell if your arms are crossed. I can tell if in your tone, if you're just not, if you're nervous. And so I try to dissuade that nervousness by striking up a conversation. Hey, how was your day? Hey, how's everything going? And dispelling some of those myths and barriers that people might have about me as a chair user, right? Because again, it's the first thing they see, but it doesn't define me. So in terms of when you encounter someone with a disability, be mindful of your attitude, your tone, and your demeanor. And just always, if you have questions about, hey, is it okay to do this? Or is it okay to ask, just ask the person. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if somebody would have said, hey, Brett, do you need help putting your wheelchair in your car? No, I'm good. I got it. No problem. Well, as I get older, I need all the help I can get. And even if I could do it faster or easier, I now let the person help me, because what happens is, if I were to say, no, you know what, I got it, whether I realize it or not, I've emotionally rejected that person who's offered to help me out. So the next time that person sees somebody with a disability who genuinely needs help, they're going to be gun shy because I told them no. And so I tell everybody, yeah, you can help me. Yes, I would love that. And I've had some of the most emotional conversations, like at the supermarket with somebody trying to reach something for me, or years ago I had an assignment in New York City, and I hired a professional photographer to document how challenging New York City can be. And in the middle of Manhattan, this elderly woman comes up to me, and she says, "May I ask what you're doing?" I said, "Yeah, we're doing a project that's going to illustrate how challenging it is for people with disabilities to navigate around New York." And we talked, and she said, "I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I've lived in Manhattan for years and years and years." And she said, "I just want to apologize to you." And I said, "Ma'am, you don't owe me an apology." She said, "Yes, I do. I love this city, and I'm so sorry that it's hard for you to get around." And she said, "I'm going to do everything I can from now on to be mindful of that." And here we are in the middle of hustle and bustle of New York. I mean, she's crying, I'm crying. The photographer I hired actually was a 25-year advertising vet, lived in Manhattan for 25 years before he moved to Phoenix. And he said, "Brett, I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen anything like that." Because that woman, was mindful of her attitude, tone, and demeanor, was mindful of the situation, and did not hesitate to come up to me and treat me as a person. And that will always stick with me. That will always stick with me. So remember, we can't control how other people treat us, right? But we can always control how we treat them. And that's being mindful and remembering that words matter and our body language matters. And if you go to the next slide. All right, now we're going to get into the nitty gritty of kind of some marketing aspects and some things that, as an industry, regardless of what you do, whether it's Parks and Recs, whether it's DMO, whatever it is, whatever touch point you have in travel hospitality, we can do better. And I'm gonna show you some images that are gonna illustrate my point here in a second. So I've been very privileged to do a lot of work at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, under the direction of Dr. Stephanie Benjamin. And you'll see here in 2021, she and a colleague did a research study analyzing 211 physical and/or online pieces of information from all around the southeastern United States, destinations all around the southeastern United States for inclusive imagery and language regarding accessibility. She and her team, Dr. Benjamin and her team, looked at, as you can see here, 9,427 images of people in tourism literature. There were only 12 depicting a person with a physical disability. Additionally, as you can see here, only half of the materials included some mention of people with disabilities. So that's not good enough. That's not okay, right? If we're talking about 9,427 images, right? As consumers with disabilities, as travelers with disabilities, nay, as people with disabilities, right? We want to see ourselves reflected in popular culture. We want to dispel stereotypes. In fact, we want to shatter stereotypes. And so I would encourage you from a marketing standpoint, and this is a lot of what my company does. Post-pandemic, we've transitioned from a business to consumer company to more of a consultancy. And that's because travel, for the most part, for my clientele, is at a standstill. So when you're representing your parks and recreational areas or your DMOs or whatever, I really want you to be mindful of the literature that you have. Do you have people with disabilities represented? Is it inclusive imagery? And if you have any questions at the end of this, we'll give you my email address. And so if you're thinking to yourself, boy, I don't know what inclusive imagery is, well, I'm going to show you in a half a second here what it is. And you'll see why I'm so passionate about this, about being seen. When I was a kid, when I was growing up, there were no people with disabilities in movies. We weren't on TV. We weren't in commercials. We were expected to be kind of in the shadows and behind the scenes. And my parents knew from a very young age that I was not somebody who was going to be in the shadows. I was not somebody who was going to be behind the scenes. I was going to, come hell or high water, I was going to make a difference somehow. And they knew that. But the point I want you to take away is that there's power in imagery. There's power in language, just like what we say matters, just like how we say it matters. Our attitude, our tone, demeanor, there's power in that. There's power in imagery. And so this illustrates, you know, the lack of imagery in the study that Dr. Benjamin and her colleague did illustrates the lack of imagery in travel literature in the Southeast. You're missing out on all those dollars we talked about, right? That sticky market of loyal consumers that spends billions of dollars every year, right? Now we can't get on a plane as readily as we were able to. So marketing to people in your area, even in your community for like a staycation, showcasing that the accessible features of any given park or any given attraction is critically important. And so these next images that Anne's going to show us in a second, you'll note that there's all kinds of like watermarks and stuff on them, and that's because I refuse to pay for them. I screen grab them. And so go ahead without further ado. All right, so this, you know, I try as you know by now, I try to be as nice and compassionate as I can be. But let's take each of these and let's think about them. If you're me, if you've navigated the world in a polished titanium manual wheelchair for basically your entire life. All right, I don't know what, like in the first image, like what's this person happy about? I'll tell you what, I hope to be friends with all of you, but if we ever go to the beach and you leave me there all by myself with balloons, like that's a problem, right? So this is not an accurate representation of people with disabilities. This just, I don't know how he or she or they got there. I don't know where they're going. I don't know what they're doing, but we got to do better than that. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, I bet it took Brett a long time to find these images. It didn't, right? It took me literally 30 seconds. Admittedly, I've used them for other presentations, but it literally took me 30 seconds. And so there's no dignity with that image because it's absolutely ridiculous, right? And so a lot of people ask me, well, Brett, how do I find those authentic images? Talk to your community partners. We're going to talk about that a little later today. Talk to your community partners. Find a center for independent living in your community. Find a disability-focused nonprofit or for-profit entity in your community and say, hey, you know what? I'm with the Parks and Rec department in Raleigh, and we want to really showcase our accessibility. They'll find people for you who would love to partake in that, right? And that way your images are authentic. That way your message is respectful. And let's take this one. Again, 3 people, allegedly celebrating something. I don't know what they're so happy about, but the thing that made me chuckle with this one is let's look at the meta tag down here in case you can't see it. Individuals on wheelchairs stand against sunset holding hands. Concept, happy disabled. Let's see, I'm going to repeat that for a second. Concept, happy disabled. I'm going to level with you guys. As well-rounded and comfortable and confident as I am, as much as I enjoy my life, the concept of somebody with a disability always being happy is wildly disrespectful. Because what I don't often talk about is how challenging my life is. I mean, Anne knows this. The worst part of my day, because I'll share it with her, because I'm very fortunate that she and I are friends. She'll say, hey, how's your day going? I say, you know what? The hardest part of my day is getting out of bed. The hardest part of my day is showering, getting out of bed, and rocking and rolling. There are some days where, guess what? I'm not really happy to have a disability, right? I'm not happy. And that's something that I think is important if we circle back to language real quick. Sometimes you're going to meet people with disabilities who aren't as open and honest and comfortable and confident as I am, who may seem like they're disappointed, like they're upset about something. And the important thing to remember is that chances are 99% of the time they're upset about something that happened in their daily life, right? Sometimes they might be having a bad day. Maybe they're like me. Maybe this morning was very difficult and painful for me to get out of bed, but you guys are worth it. So I put gel in my hair, right? I mean, you are worth it, right? But I want you to always remember that people with disabilities do not exist to make able-bodied people feel better. People with disabilities do not exist to make you feel better. We're just like you. We're husbands, we're wives, We're brothers, we're sisters, we're sons, we're daughters. We're trying to pay bills. We're trying to figure out this crazy adventure called life. We're trying to figure it out. And so if you do run across somebody who has a disability, who's having a bad day, that's okay, because we all have bad days. We can't all be expected to always be at our best, right? So just remember that. And then this one, I mean, this is just, I don't even know what to say about this. First of all, that wheelchair, you know how I know that's not authentic? Because there's no cushion in it, number one. And I can tell you that's a foldable wheelchair, and some foldable wheelchairs don't use cushions, but most do. So that's not authentic. And what could we possibly, like somebody who buys this image from iStock, what could they possibly be trying to convey? I mean, what happened to this guy? Where is he? Why is he by himself? Why is he just laying there? But that is the power of imagery. That is ridiculous. That is offensive. That makes my blood boil, if I'm being honest with my new friends here. And so again, imagery matters because it fuels perception. And you know, the people, the little kids and the families and the moms and dads who use your playgrounds, who visit your destinations, you know, we are people, right? Remember Cody's shirt from our time earlier together. Kind is cool. Compassion is cool. So it's very, very important to me that each of you understands you have to be authentic. I want you to have disability focused marketing campaigns. I think it's imperative, in fact, but they must be authentic. They must be respectful. And again, we're going to talk about that in the panel today. And if you have any questions about authenticity or about how to make it happen, call me. I'm always here to help. I promise you, I'm always here to help. So these are 3 examples of what not to do. I don't want to see any websites with these images on them, right? And I know you guys are better than that. You'd never do that, but you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. If I were to audit, you know, tourism focused websites, I bet you I'd find more than one picture of some person stranded on a beach by themselves who seems to be super happy about it. If Ann and I and her husband ever go to the beach and Claudia's with us and you guys leave me at the beach, we're going to have you're buying dinner at the very least, and we're going to have some words, my friend. So that's what, you know, not to do. So let's go ahead, Ann, and we'll go to the next slide. All right, so this is, I know a lot of you on this, you know, earning continuing education units today. I believe that's the acronym for CEU. Probably already know this, right? But I want to make sure that we understand that the 2010, you know, that there were standards of the ADA that were updated in 2010. And part of those standards that were updated in 2010 do have to do with playgrounds and areas such as that. And so these are some very basic things to think about. But remember, the ADA is a floor. It's not a celebratory ceiling. So even if you get sign off from an architecture firm that your playground or your attractions within your DMO are accessible, what I want you to think about is what can you do beyond that? What can you do beyond that? So let's think about that for a second. Arizona is one of the few states in this country that has a statewide law that says, hey, you know what? If you're building a new park or retrofitting a park, it has to have an adult changing table in the restroom, has to have an adult changing table, right? Because people like Cody's mom, Jen, and Cody use an adult changing table, right? I mean, sometimes they're out and about and accidents happen. And so, you know, if you have questions about what brand of changing table to use, or how do I go about getting grant funding, you know, talk to me, email me afterwards. But an adult changing table is something that probably is going to cost you $400. And is not that big a deal, but from a marketing standpoint, will make all the difference in the world. And so when you're talking about attractions, when you're talking about parks, are they accessible? Are they engaging? Are they comfortable? Do they encourage cognitive development, right? Is it a place for all? Truly speaking, is it a place for all? Those are some things to keep in mind. And later in our panel, we'll talk about some tangible ways to do that, because I know funding, you know, for what you folks do, funding is always a challenge, always an issue. But we're gonna talk about that and give you some practical ways to make a difference. So go ahead. All right, and so this is, again, you know, as it relates to the 2010 standards and ADA compliance, right? So I'm not going to read this to you. You guys are all very, very competent, but I do want to let you know that, again, any new playground has to be accessible. There are architecture firms who specialize in this stuff, and so if you have any questions, I want you to always, you know, don't hesitate to reach out. We can refer you to somebody in your area who can help. The worst thing that we can do as people, the worst thing we can do as people is say, hey, you know what, I got this. No, you know, sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. Lean into the experts, you know, lean into the experts. It's, you know, I mentor a lot of young people. Some have disabilities and some don't. And they always say to me, well, you know, Brett, you're such a great mentor. And I said, well, thanks, you know, that means a lot. But why am I a great mentor? Right? Because I've made a lot of mistakes and I've learned from them. So I don't want you guys to be fearful of making a mistake. Making a mistake just means that you're demonstrating effort. What I want you to take away from that is, like, learn from that mistake. Learn from that mistake. Be comfortable, be confident, learn from your mistakes and don't repeat them. And if you attack any work challenge, any personal challenge with an open mind, with an open heart, awesome things are going to happen. You don't have to be an expert at this stuff because experts in this area already exist. You need to focus on what you do well. You need to focus on how you can make a difference. And that's what today is. Today is so much more than, you know, hanging out and getting some CEUs and checking off a box. No, you might not realize it, but in this moment, you're becoming better people. The most powerful question we can ask ourselves and each other is why. And what we've done together during our time right now is we've talked about the why without even knowing. The power of why. Why do we do what we do? Why is treating people with dignity, regardless of where we sit on the spectrum of physical ability, important? How can we do that? Why should we do that? Because everybody in this world matters. That's why. Everybody deserves to be treated with dignity. And that's why I'm here today. And that's why I will never stop doing what I'm doing. Next slide. All right. So this is a fairly mundane slide. You see a phone number. Yes, I give you my phone number. Look at this, the phone. It's on Do Not Disturb now because you guys are more important than anything that could happen on this. But I want you to think about this as a virtual baseball card, right? Baseball cards, they increase in value if you put them under plastic and don't look at them for 30 years. Business cards don't. You got, each of you on this call today has my business card. Are you going to use it? Because if you don't, it's just sitting there. You got an expert, a phone call away, an email away. So I challenge you, you know, when you have a moment, even if it's just to say hi, even if it's just to say, hey, Brett, you know, I love meeting you. I love your presentation. You see what I did there? That's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I loved your presentation, Brett. Just say hi, give me a call, shoot me an email. Let's make a difference together, because honestly, it's just like the animated video. I can't do this by myself. I can't do this alone. I need allies, like everybody affiliated with the NC State Extension, like my friend Ann. I need you guys to keep pushing, to keep moving, to challenge yourselves to get better. Like, this has been a lot of fun. This is really the highlight of my month, spending time with each of you. But what can we do to make it better, right? What can we do to get out of our comfort zone and make it better? And so with that, I would just encourage you to enjoy the rest of the day. You're going to be in breakout sessions. This is a comfortable, safe, respectful environment. There is no such thing as a poor question or a bad question or a dumb question. I will answer them all, and I will make sure that by the end of our time together, you feel better than you did when you logged on this morning. That's the best thing. That's the best gift I can give you. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Ann.
Thanks so much, Brett. I think, Charlene, we have a question that's looking for some perspective in the chat. Looks like Samantha has a question about marketing their specialized programming and recreation. She talks about how for their more generalized programming, they don't do as much photographing, but she feels like every time they have a specialized program, people are there taking photos, and she doesn't, it makes her feel somewhat uncomfortable about it. And she just likes some perspective, or a different perspective on perhaps a way to look at that, or a way to kind of work through that.
Well, I think we have a tendency, and I want to make sure that I'm interpreting your question correctly, or the way that you want it answered. But I think the challenge with disability is that it's just like today, right? We feel like we have to wait to talk about disability until there's some sort of day, like to market or whatever, or we have to. We can only talk about disability when we're unveiling an accessible playground or something like that. If that's the case, and that's what you've done, get those authentic images of kids and people with disabilities, but get them intermingling with able-bodied folks, right? We don't want to inadvertently, kind of segregate people with disabilities. And I would encourage you, to the extent possible, understanding that everybody has a boss, and buy-in it needs to happen from the top, and sometimes that can be easier said than done. But I would encourage you to start thinking about, don't just take photos of people with disabilities enjoying your destination or your equipment or what have you, when there's something to do with specifically with accessibility. Start building that in to your general photo shoots. Start building that into all of your stuff, so that again, people see disability in an inclusive nature, and it's not just a me versus you, or an us versus them. I hope that answers your question. Does that help?
Samantha, let us know if you have any follow-up, or if we missed anything there. Either you can come off mute or type it in the chat.
I guess really what I was getting at was, and Marion, my coworker, also said something similar to what you said, but really what I'm getting at is, you hear stories of people of color at predominantly white institutions who talk about how every time photos are taken for promotional materials, they get pulled into the photo, or they get pulled to the front of the photo, and how that's an uncomfortable experience for them. I just don't want to, we're starting a marketing focus group in our department, and taking more pictures and better pictures of our programming is going to be a goal of that group. And I just want to avoid taking that kind of direction with this group. But obviously, Marion has much more perspective on this than I do, because she works with our specialized programming.
Yeah, and hi, I'm Marion, and let me chime in that I probably 85 to 90% of our participants that we know of that have disabilities have autism, and it's hard to take a photo of. We can't visually portray that we are including folks.
Yeah, those are all very realistic challenges, and I can relate to the first one. I mean, when I was growing up, I grew up in a very, albeit Rockwellian and very lovely place to grow up. I grew up in a small community in Northwest Ohio, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, I was diversity, equity, inclusion before anybody knew what that was. I can remember being pulled out of class and talking, hey, let's showcase, a student with a disability, and it was me, because at the time there was nobody else. So I understand that, and I think the very fact that you're aware of that means that you're going to be very comfortable and very cautious. Maybe not comfortable, but very cautious about that. And so what I would suggest is there's a saying, perhaps you've heard it, that's widespread in the disability community, and it's nothing about us without us, right? And so if you're concerned about always pulling folks, the same folks in for a shoot or whatever, making sure that they don't feel used or conspicuous, talk to find a disability organization in your area and talk to them about your objectives, and literally tell them, I want to make sure that I portray visitors and consumers and travelers with disabilities with dignity and respect. How can we work together to do that? I guarantee you their jaw will be on the floor for about 3 seconds, and they'll probably be silent because so many people don't do that. Just and sort of put it perhaps more colloquially, ask the experts, right? Find those people and, pay them, find a way to pay them for their time. Maybe it's a $25 Starbucks gift card, or I'm a big eat local guy, right? So maybe you partner with a local restaurant that's accessible, and you give them a $25 gift card. Just say, hey, your time matters, you matter. But just ask the experts. And if you're having trouble finding disability focused orgs to work with in your area, shoot me an email. I'm very connected, right? So I might know somebody in your part of the country. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Brett. And thanks for those questions. It was a great discussion. We have a comment or a question from Glenn in the chat. What's the best strategy you know of to train organizations to think about accessibility first instead of last?
Oh man. Oh, that's a lovely question. So thank you for asking it. I think it requires a mindset shift, right? I think you have to arm yourself with some of the knowledge that you learned today. You have to be able to talk about the market size, the fact that 1 in 5 Americans, over the age of 18 have a disability, the fact that 70% of those have a disability that's invisible, right? What do all those groups that I just talked about have in common? We all spend money, right? And so again, remembering that, and when you have the very first meeting for an initiative within your organization, I don't care what it is, have the courage to be the person that says, hey, how are we addressing or interfacing with or marketing respectfully to people within our community who have disabilities? How are we doing that? And regardless of disability or anything, we all know from our professional lives, I spent 20 years in corporate America before I started Brett Approved. And the most powerful question in a business meeting we can ask, who's going to pay for it, right? So maybe there's some specific grants that are state or federal monies that are for promoting what you're doing to people with disabilities. You'd be amazed. You'd really be amazed at the money that's out there. But to answer your question, always have it top of mind. And just like you had the courage today to ask such a wonderful question, pose that in meetings. Make sure your leadership, if you have a boss or bosses, make sure your leadership is comfortable and understands the power of accessibility. And if you need somebody to come in on a call and explain the difference between accessibility and inclusiveness, I'm happy to do that, right? Because we remember from our time earlier together today that making something accessible typically does not cost a ton of money. It just costs you just have to think about it a little bit, and then you have to have a plan of action. Like I was working with a small town in the Midwest, and it's a historic downtown, and they were like, we want people to be able to get in the shops and do this or that. So what we did was we found them portable ramps on Amazon that they could just whip out, and then it's like, hey, not a big deal, right? It's just about making things as accessible as possible given the parameters. I hope that answers your question. That's a great question.
Thanks, Brett. And with that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Brett is going to be back later. He's going to be the moderator of our panel, so we're not saying goodbye to him. We'll have some great conversations later. In between, we're going to do a little breakout activity, but for now, we'll see you back here, let's say at 10:57, and we'll kick off the next session. But don't leave, right. Just take a break from the Zoom.
and thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you shortly.
Yeah, there they are. I was like, this looks like half the grade. Hopefully y'all had enough time to start some conversation there. That was quite a quick little turnaround, but I don't know if any group had somebody that wanted to share something that you thought was pretty extraordinary that somebody's doing, or something that was inspiring or interesting. I know, they never are.
Here, I'll speak up for the Town of Cary Parks and Rec and say that our department has done a lot in for offering not only the specialized recreation programs for participants with both physical and other disabilities, but also creating programs for a lot of inclusion to get children to be able to participate in our camps and other programs, so that they're not in specialized programs. They're just mainstreamed with everybody else getting to do the same fun activities, and that they've made an investment in 2 full-time staff for that purpose.
That's great. Thanks for sharing, Jennifer. Have anyone else who wants to share? Samantha wants to shout out her coworker, Marion, on this call for all the work she's done to provide inclusive programming. So awesome work, Marion. We can't hear you, but.
I said thank you, but I always wish we could be doing more.
Well, wonderful. That leads us into our next question. What sort of opportunities we have for improvement within our organizations or our communities, and if we have any ideas of next steps for that. I'm going to give y'all about 10 minutes this time, so more time to chat. So we'll meet back in here at 3:20. And here are the questions in the chat. Just a few more seconds. Kara, did we get you in your correct group? Okay. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Quick Zoom skills.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
I've been here all day, so. All right, looks like we're all back. Hopefully that was a little bit more time for you to have a conversation. But I'm not sure, does somebody want to share about something that their organization, or something that came up in their conversations that they thought was valuable, that other attendees may want to hear about, or ideas or steps to move forward? Yes, Samantha, I see you have a raised hand.
Yes, someone in our group brought up a great point about not just saying that things are accessible. And if you want to add more about it, Nancy, because you brought it up, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, people might say they're accessible, or they might be accessible friendly, or, or whatever, disability friendly, but you really need to go in and hone in. What does that mean? Because it's different for everybody depending on what disability people have. So we definitely, I know for us, and I'm not in the park and rec world, but I work with them. But in the DMO world, we just need to be more specific with our messaging as far as what that means. Because we need to be genuine, because if they read it and we sell it, and then they come and then they don't have that experience that we sold them, they're not going to come back. They're going to have a very poor experience, and then they're going to tell the story to their 100 friends. So we just need to be very specific and accurate, genuine.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
Nancy, that's such a great point. Yeah, Brett, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely wonderful, because disability does mean different things to different people, right? So as a manual chair user, for example, I have friends in manual chairs who could pop a wheelie and ride a wheelie for 12 hours straight. And I'll never forget, I was at a conference one time years ago, and the elevator was full, and these guys were like, hey, you coming down? And they popped wheelies, and they probably went down like 30 steps. And I said, fellas, if I did that, I'd end up in the ICU, right? So every disability is different. Everybody's experience with disability is different. So being aware of that, Nancy, I'm telling you, my friend, you're already ahead of the game. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. It's all about the experience, and the experience we sell. We want people to actually enjoy. Anybody else have something that they, one more share out before we take a little break to get ready for our panel? I know y'all are having some great conversations. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, I'll say that one thing that Marion talked about was the difficult, which resonated with me as someone in marketing, is the difficulty of how you communicate with populations, disabled populations, knowing that everyone kind of has different feelings about how they're referred to. And there's going to be a lot of variation. And so like crafting messaging for all those people that, doesn't other anybody and makes people receptive to your message can be really, really challenging, which is, something that I've thought of as well.
I think too, to piggyback on that, is there's a wide breadth of disabilities. There's invisible disabilities, there's mobility issues or cognitive, the gamut is very large, and to incorporate all those different people and accommodations it can be tricky too.
Yep, those are both wonderful points. I appreciate you sharing those. I would say, in terms of language, generally speaking, Glenn, you always want to put the person first. So, guests with disabilities, travelers with disabilities, things like that. Now, where it gets tricky, my friend, is that there are, people in the disability community, in my community, who don't view their disability as a disability. For example, our friends in the deaf community are very, very proud of their deafness. They have their own language that some of us can speak a little bit, but most of us can't, right? And so when you're talking to guests with disabilities who have no hearing or low hearing, it's perfectly acceptable to say, to embrace their deafness and lead with that. But for the most part, the general rule of thumb is if you just remember to put the person first in your copy, and I used to be a writer for years and years, so I get it. You don't want to inadvertently do something you shouldn't or offend somebody. I understand. And here's the other thing, Glenn, if you're in a pickle, you're in a bind, shoot me an email. I'll help you. We'll get through it together, and then you can say, hey, you know what? I ran this by an expert. And so then if somebody has a challenge, I'm happy to talk to them. Right. So
I appreciate that offer. Thank you.
You got it, bud. Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break. So we'll meet back at 3:30, and we have a wonderful panel that'll be ready for all of your questions when we get back. Give me the thumbs up if you are hearing us. You don't have your camera on. Wonderful. Looks like most of us are back. If our panelists, yep, they all have their cameras on. I'm going to unpin myself after I introduce this incredible panel that we have. I've been so excited. I'm excited to absorb some knowledge from them. So I'm going to do some brief introductions of each of them. Let's get started. So first up is Jamie Botnovich, who moved to North Carolina in 2009 after growing up near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to escape the cold and be near the beautiful salt marshes that she grew up dreaming about. She has long been an advocate of both public spaces, the joy and memories created there, and the ability for everyone to be able to experience them. They have been drawn to serve people in many ways, including a lifetime of experience working within a community focused on serving people with a disability in both a professional and personal volunteer setting. These two passions came together during Jamie's prior work with the town of Swansboro Parks and Recreation Department as program coordinator. During this time, she established a resource fair for people with disabilities to find tailored resources that can be otherwise cumbersome to identify. Additionally, they created a once-a-month program that is designed to benefit adults with disabilities ranging from mild to profound, but open to anyone interested. Jamie has moved on professionally and is now with the Division of Marine Fisheries, but she still hosts these monthly meetings and continues her advocacy, serving on the board of the Town of Swansboro Parks and Rec Department and as a treasurer for the Friends of Hammocks Beach and Bear Island group. In her spare time, Jamie loves to focus on adventure and creative endeavors. If not out kayaking or walking the beach, we will likely find them refining skills in basket making, stained glass, duck carving, or whatever new skills or techniques are currently in the mix. Next up, we have Allison Brooks. Allison joins us all the way from Mesa, Arizona, where she is the Director of Destination Experience and Advocacy for Visit Mesa. Her priority is advancing Visit Mesa's position as a critical economic development agency for Mesa and the East Valley, with a strong focus on industry, research, and advocacy. In addition, Visit Mesa's commitment to accessibility and inclusion falls under Brooks, who spearheads these initiatives within the hospitality community. Brooks also oversees the partnership program and group services for Visit Mesa. Brooks is a graduate of Arizona State University with a degree in tourism. She has a dynamic tourism and hospitality background, serving in marketing, training, and account management roles for Two Roads Hospitality, Airbnb, and Brinker International. She previously owned and operated her own coffee shop as well. She lives in Phoenix, Arizona, in the Phoenix, Arizona area with her husband and 2 sons. Next, we have Laurel Heiselman, who is a recent transplant to North Carolina. Welcome, Laurel. We're so glad you're here. She holds a BS in Recreation Administration with a concentration in therapeutic recreation from Texas State University, Texas being her home state. She has been a certified therapeutic recreation specialist for over a decade and became a certified Parks and Rec professional in 2019. Laurel began her career working part-time at psychiatric facilities and as a contract recreation therapist in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Prior to moving to Raleigh, Laurel worked for the Austin Parks and Rec Department, an adaptive recreation facility, Macbeth Recreation Center, and with the Inclusion Unit. Laurel is passionate about inclusion and community recreation and worked hard to expand inclusion support services in Austin. Her energy and dedication to those with disabilities has allowed her to continue to grow the reach of adaptive and inclusive programming throughout her career. Laurel is an active member of the Texas Recreation and Park Society, having graduated from the 2018 Academy of Leadership Development, and most recently serving as an at-large board member of the Therapeutic Recreation Branch of TRAPS. In January 2021, Laurel accepted a position as Inclusion Manager with the City of Raleigh Parks and Rec and Cultural Resources Department. She's excited to continue to grow the inclusion process in a new city and state. Last up, but not least, we have Sarah Ray, who is the Public Information Officer for North Carolina State Fairgrounds, a dynamic campus bringing citizens from all parts of the state and walks of life together to participate in a wide variety of activities. Most importantly, the annual North Carolina State Fair and Got to Be NC festivals. Sarah's responsibilities at the North Carolina State Fair includes public relations, creative brand development, media placement, strategic partnerships, sales growth, and event activation. With over 20 years of experience in business to consumer marketing, partnership development, and event management at North Carolina State University and the North Carolina State Fair, Sarah focuses on the total attendee experience as a primary driver for the engagement and continued business growth. Sarah played a vital role in the development of the North Carolina State Fair Accessibility Day in 2021. The day included special programming such as ASL interpreters, special livestock shows, universal changing tables, noise canceling headphones, a chill out zone, a time for rides, vendors and games to operate with no lights or music, just to list a few of the things. I'm sure she'll get more into it. Ray said of the planning for the day, we know we can't be everything to everyone, but we also know we could be something to someone. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brett to start some questions, and feel free to type questions in the chat as we go along. And also, we forgot to do this at the beginning, but if you want to tell us who you are and where you're from too, so our panelists can see. I'm talking to all of our participants on the call, so we kind of know where everybody is and they can get a feel for who's on the call. So thanks, Brett. Take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Outstanding introduction and very well done. And let me just say to the panelists before we get started, I appreciate very much each of you taking time to share your wisdom and knowledge with all the attendees today. So thank you in advance for that. So as you know, or as you may know, everybody here is going to get some continuing education units. So really, the goal of this part of our time together is to really get down to the, shall we say, the nitty gritty, and give tips and tricks and hacks on how we can accomplish the wonderful things that each of you has accomplished. And so I really want to give each of you time to talk about the great things that you've done. And so without further ado, we're going to get right into it. And one of the things that I was so excited to have Sarah join us because of the great work she's done at the North Carolina State Fair and Accessibility Day in particular. That concept is near and dear to my heart. And you know, Sarah, when we're thinking about a large event, you know, when we're thinking about any endeavor that's to scale the way that a fair is, it can be difficult to kind of know where to get started. Can you kind of talk about, if you'd be so kind, talk about the great work that you did, but then how, you know, the interfacing between internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, and making sure that everybody, all the pertinent partners, were on board with this wonderful day that you put together.
Yeah, no problem. Hello, everyone. Accessibility Day has been sort of a 12-year event in the making. I started here at the fair, not necessarily doing programmatic inclusions, really just in marketing. And being in marketing, that meant handling social media, and that meant getting the phone calls from parents and group homes and nonprofit organizations that really wanted their loved ones or their clients to find their place at the fair. It can be really an overwhelming place. And so over the years, we had kind of implemented some things. There were things like being able to touch our giant pumpkins and watermelons, or a touch and see program where people could come in and actually touch some of the handicrafts and hobbies. We've been doing a special livestock show for a little over 20 years, which is kind of a love event for all of our livestock participants. But we always knew we could do more, and we always felt like we were kind of putting things together, but not in a really cohesive way. So as we started looking at the 2021 fair after canceling in 2020, we had a lot of furloughs. I got put in charge of sponsorship on top of marketing, and I really started to kind of look at our partners and try to find a way to make it happen. I would say, while the state fair is huge, and that you may come away thinking like, okay, they're huge, they have plenty of money, there's no way I can do this. There really is. It's really a point of just pulling off chunks, and the entire scope of what we did can be applied on any scale. So I started looking to start with at people we were looking at as sponsors for that year. What is the mission of their company? What are they all about? Are they about inclusion? Are they about diversity? Their keywords in their mission statements, on their HR pages, that you can go in and look at and really see, would they fit for some sort of program that would address accessibility? For us, that perfect partner was Bandwidth. They're a software company that has roots here in North Carolina. They're actually moving close to the fairgrounds. Currently, they're building a global headquarters about, a mile from us at this point. They're located currently on Centennial campus on the other side of Raleigh. But we kind of pitched it to them like, you guys are looking for something to really show your commitment to the community, and put your name out there in front of North Carolinians. And this really is kind of the perfect way that we can come up with to showcase you in a big way and the good that you're doing in the community. So they were totally on board with it. For about 5 years prior, we've been working with different groups like the Autism Society of North Carolina. We worked with Prevent Blindness, trying to get some ideas on what we could do. We actually lucked out with Bandwidth, and one of their employees who's on their marketing team's daughter was born without sight. So she was all on board and helped with a lot of kind of making us look at things a little bit differently. Like I said, we couldn't be everything to everyone. We're not going to be able to do that, but we could be something for everyone. And we needed to manage those expectations. And she kind of gave us the confidence to know that you don't have to do everything, but what you put out there that you're going to do that well. So we bit off kind of small chunks that we knew we could do. I could hire ASL interpreters for our music stages for that day. That's not something I could afford for all 11 days, but for that day, I could make that happen. I could do special inclusive competitions that day. I could do a chill out zone that day. Whereas for the whole 11 days of the fair and 1 million people, I couldn't accomplish that. But I could take that Sunday and plan everything against that Sunday and make it kind of a memorable experience for those people.
Yeah, and I think if I could jump in real quick, Sarah, you've already given us a ton of great information. So the takeaway there is do what you can. Yeah. Do what you can, make it as accessible as possible for as long as possible. And so the challenge, next year is obviously to improve upon that, but we've all got a jumping off point, and sometimes it can be overwhelming, but do what you can. And the other thing that I love what you said there, Sarah, and again, I'm a 20+ year PR guy, marketing guy. So do your research in the community and figure out who has like-minded mission, vision, values. And it's never easy getting money from people, obviously, but it's an easier sell than we might think, right? Because with the company that you mentioned, it's like, what a fantastic PR opportunity for them, right? Mm-hmm. We care so much about everyone in our community that we want everyone to enjoy the North Carolina State Fair to the extent possible, so much so that we're willing to give monies for that, right? We're putting our money, as they say, where our mouth is. And so that is absolutely fantastic. And what have you, I guess as a follow-up, and then we'll move on to other panelists, Sarah, what was the biggest surprise that you learned in putting this together, this specific day for folks? Was there a learning that you had that you were like, I knew we needed to do this. I knew it was the right thing to do, but I was genuinely surprised perhaps at the positive feedback? Or what are you going to take from what you've done and improve things next year? To improve things next year? I
think there were two major takeaways. One was when we announced the day, we had a deluge of teachers, of special educators, and just run-of-the-mill teachers. We had a deluge of kind of, therapists that have clients that could benefit, that contacted us and said, how can I help? What can I do? So we brought those people in, and they kind of planned and gave us complete, access to their brains to figure out what really we could do. And that was sort of shocking to us, about how much people really were excited about what we were doing. And then the second thing, we tried to plan as much as we could for as diverse of age range as we could, right? But knowing that most of what we were doing would have put 12, 15 and under kind of things for a lot of the activities. But while we were out there and our Commissioner of Agriculture was going around and talking to people, he actually had a family with a former military person who has PTSD, whose mother brought him. He's probably 25, 30 at this point, and was crying because since he had gotten out of the military, he could not come out and enjoy the fair. But because we did something in the morning where there were no lights, no sounds, they were able as a full family to come out and enjoy the fair. And I think that kind of moved us the most, because we had focused so much on the younger age range, but just to know that it went past that was kind of heartwarming for all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so that brings up such a wonderful point, right? You can only, again, I want to really hammer it home. You can only do what you can do. And when you put forth the effort with an open mind and an open heart, you're going to see dividends and returns that you don't expect. And that was a wonderful example. It's making sure that we're welcoming and open to all is really key. And again, if you're at a smaller DMO or you're at a smaller Parks and Rec department, look within your community for those funding sources. Be bold, be brash. Say, hey, this is who I am, this is where I work, and this is what I'm doing, and this is why this stuff matters. Confidence carries the day, my friends. Confidence carries the day. And so, Jenny, I want to talk to you now about all the great work that you're doing, and what a wonderful bio that you shared with us all. And so talk to me about making sure that you're providing current and relevant services and opportunities and using current and relative language. One of the ways that you and I bonded that our guests don't know about is that we're both proponents of using the right language and making sure that through language and through attitude, tone, and demeanor, through body language, that we represent ourselves to people with disabilities in the right way. Knowing that for a lot of folks on this panel, that can be a kind of a challenge, right? Because nobody wakes up and says, I want to do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing. So talk about that, if you would.
Kind of avoid doing the wrong thing is by doing the wrong thing, and being okay with it and forgiving myself for that. I've seen that a lot of people get kind of scared to offer something because you don't want to offend anybody. And there's a lot at stake, as government employees, our retirement's on the line. So that's a lot. And plus, this is what we love to do. Why would we want to give that up for anything, especially whenever we're trying to do the right thing? So I really reached out and built some strong community partners. I was telling my breakout group that I had organized a resource fair whenever I was full-time with the park. And I strongly encourage you all to do the same if you're in a position where you can offer programming, because people love to hand out their flyers. If someone has marketing material, they want to get it out there. And for you to build a place where people can give their marketing material to the people that really could benefit from it it's Christmas for Jamie. It's beautiful. It's everything. So that helped initially because it connected me with people in the community that I really, really, really needed to be in touch with for a lot of reasons. I was able to connect with people that could benefit from other programs. I was able to, get this knowledge out into the community and help people that I care about. My little brother, he has a diagnosis as a result of stroke, and he was born without a fully developed heart. He's going to need a heart and liver transplant, but he does have he has kind of a laundry list of diagnoses. I do too. I have lots of alphabet soup, I always like to joke. So I have PTSD, I have OCD, but not the kind that you clean the house with. So they all look very different, all of these little diagnoses, and just having people to kind of bring together all these descriptors and shapers to someone's personality provides that initial sense of commonality. That is what I always worked for in Parks and Rec, was building a community space. So that was a great jumping off point for everything else. And one of the things that it gave me that I still use today in my programming is the people that I can ask questions to, because they will answer your questions. You can ask anything. I'm lucky to have my sister who, so my sister teaches a learning impaired mod severe self-contained classroom for the Department of Defense Education. And she was actually Teacher of the Year 2017 for her district. So she is really, 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 she's highly recognized. She's super respected, and she cares a lot. So I think in the past year, we've had 5 conversations about how to talk about people. And it wasn't just with her. I've had this discussion with the Down Syndrome Network locally, the Autism Society. I've had this conversation with different care providers, and that has been so great for me because I'm getting it from different places. So, and it's something like that that's so small that really makes a difference.
Yeah, and I want to touch on, it's commonality, right? It's coming together, it's community. Because, I'll tell you, I'll share, my own experience as a kid. Growing up, I was the only one with a disability in my school for many, many years. My family, fortunately, everybody was healthy and able-bodied, and so I couldn't articulate it as a kid, of course, because I just wasn't ready. But I mean, I did. There were times where I did feel alone, and so I think, particularly in this age of technology, we're all together on Zoom. We all have iPhones, iPads, iMacs, right? It's I. I love that. I love what you shared, Jamie, because it's not I, it's we, right? It's we, and together we're going to make a difference. Together we're going to, as you say, the alphabet soup of what you work through every day. We're gonna make sure that you feel comfortable. We're gonna make sure your brother feels comfortable, and that's very, very powerful. I mean, that makes me, just the way you said that so well. So thank you for sharing that. And really, the takeaway, this follow-up question for you, then we're going to shift to my dear friend Allison. But a follow-up question for you. A lot of folks on this call might be thinking, well, I've got a laundry list of stuff I want to do. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. But funding is and can be quite challenging. How have you? What advice would you give to somebody who's really looking to fund a particular project? Like, I know you've done a lot of that in the past. How did you get started, and what advice would you give attendees today to kind of get rocking and rolling?
So I'm lucky that part of my alphabet soup is attention deficit. And so one of my little shaping characteristics is that I have poor impulse control, which has worked to my benefit because I have no shame asking things. So the first step for me was just asking blatantly, like randomly in every direction, like, hey, what do y'all got? You got any extra? I will take some of that. And so that just sort of evolved into seeking out different funding opportunities. So with the Friends of Hammocks and Bear Island, the state park that I assist with locally, we literally within the past month just received a beach wheelchair through, and yeah, I'm so excited. And so we got the money for that through, boots on the ground fundraising. But a big portion was asking the TDA. So we went to the Tourism Development Authority and said, like, hey, y'all, we have a beach and people need to get to it. Don't you think we need to get them there? And they were like, you know what, this is great. Let's do it. And they gave us a check for almost $3,000. So that was great. Town of Swansboro, whenever I started there, how I started there was the Trillium Play Together grant. So if you guys are Eastern North Carolina, Trillium is, oh my gosh, everybody, if you're not already reaching out, if you're in that area and not reaching out to Trillium, you really should. They kind of have their hands everywhere and they will connect you with people. So they have a grant for adaptive playground equipment, and we have a wheelchair swing in the park, and I think people come from hours. My brother-in-law's brother also has CP, and he is in his 30s. I think he was 35 the first time he ever got on a swing as not a baby. So like he came from Pennsylvania to Swansboro and was like, I want to go on this swing.
Yeah, man, that's
I've
awesome.
never
Awesome.
been on a swing, and it was so cool. It was just, I mean, you're like, yes, Jason, go swing all day.
I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm booking a flight to Swansboro. I'm swinging. I'm doing
so,
because all that playground equipment, and I'm not saying that in jest. All the playground equipment when I was a kid was not accessible to me. None of it.
Yeah. And so there's funding out there so you can, provide these opportunities. And it's great too. And it's great to have that. It's important because it's not just for the children. I can't tell you, every time I pass a playground, there's a parent on the feature too. You need to get every parent on that feature.
Yep. And so again, I want to reinforce the commonality of what's been shared so far. It's looking within, it's thinking outside of the box, it's talking to potential sponsors and reminding them of not only it's the right thing to do, but they will benefit from it. It's there's a saying that's been with us, for eons, fortune favors the brave, right? So use things to your advantage. Go ask questions, because here's the thing, friends, the worst things a potential funder can say is no. Then you go, okay, great, I'm going to talk to you next year, right?
Yeah, they can only say no so many times.
Exactly. And so Allison, for those of you who don't know, Allison and I are dear friends. We do a lot of great work together at the City of Mesa. I'm privileged and proud to sit on the board of Visit Mesa. And so when I earned the privilege to speak with you all today, the first call I made was I said, hey, Allison, you got to talk about the great stuff that the City of Mesa is doing. So without further ado, I want to give you a chance to showcase, Allison, and talk about the autism aspect of what you're doing and some of the great programs. Would you mind sharing some of that with us?
Yeah, would love to. Thank you for having me. And we're so glad that you are on our board. You are such an asset to our Visit Mesa and our city. So thank you for serving on our board.
My pleasure.
So some of you are asking, what is a DMO? It's a destination marketing, or it can be sometimes management organization. And that's exactly what Visit Mesa is. And some of you might be more familiar with the term Convention and Visitors Bureau. So now we're referred to as DMOs for the most part, because first, let's admit it's a lot sexier to say DMO than Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Exactly.
And secondly, Bureau it says bureaucracy, right? Nobody likes that. So now we're DMOs. So Visit Mesa, Mesa, Arizona is outside of the Phoenix. We're a suburb of Phoenix. We are the 35th largest city in the United States. We're a big old city. Over 500,000 people live in Mesa alone. So we're a very large suburb. And so what our job is to market Mesa to outside visitors, whether they be from out of state or even locals to come to our city. You'll see in that little box up here in my little screen, it says City Limitless. That's what we named ourselves, because we were born out of the fact that, yes, Mesa is huge and we're marketing all the things inside of it, but just outside of our borders, we have the coolest stuff. As you can see a picture behind me, that's just right outside of Mesa. So we have lots of water, even though we're in the desert, we have lots of water attractions, lakes, rivers. We also do marketing for a couple nearby suburbs as well. So the term City Limitless came out of that we're not limited to what's just right inside of our city. When I came along to Visit Mesa, I looked at City Limitless and I'm like, well, wait a second, time out. We have amazing, yeah, great. City Limitless is physical, but what about feeling limitless when you come here? And so now it's been kind of thought about in a different way, which is that we want everybody who comes to Mesa to feel absolutely limitless throughout their experience. And so that means that people who have different accessibility needs, they can all feel welcomed and ready to come here and visit our beautiful city. One of the first things that was done prior to me joining Visit Mesa was us becoming the first ever autism certified city in the United States, really the whole world. That's done through IBCCES, the International Board of Credential. It's Friday. It's getting rough for me to speak right now. I'm not gonna lie. Credential and Continuing Education Standards, IBCCES, out of Florida. So we are officially certified, meaning we're not just like autism friendly. We've gone through a course, we've taken tests, we get recertified every year or two. And to earn that certification as a city, we had to have over 50 businesses certified, and we have over 4,800 individuals certified. So it's a pretty big deal and a big honor, which started from the grassroots. I mean, it really started out of our CEO's vision. And it was, I don't want to go too deep into these details, but he has a son on the spectrum. Every year, him and his family would all go visit the same city, and they usually have the same experience. But one year, they decided to go into a different area in the city. And unfortunately, his son was having just a really rough week that week, meltdown after meltdown. And they were used to the looks and the stares, but for whatever reason, it was coming from the hospitality people, which it never should have happened that way. And long story short, he said, I can't do anything in this city, but I sure as heck can try it in Mesa. So he came back to Mesa with this vision of what can we do? Let's do something. Let's become something. And he said, you know what though? I want it to be more than just friendly. I want it to mean something, to really show that we earned this. And thought that it was just going to be Visit Mesa and our board becoming certified, but it grew organically, and it was all of our partners becoming certified, and then police and fire and parks and rec and the libraries and big companies like Boeing and Salt River Project. It's kind of insane to think about how it really it spun off and so quickly. We did it in under a year. And that certification happened right before COVID hit. So it's relatively new, being that it was kind of, nothing was really done with it for a good year because nobody was traveling. So we're back in the action and getting more certified autism centers, certified, what they're called a certified autism center, when they get 80% or more of their guest facing staff certified. So adding to those businesses. So that's one of the things that's really important to us. We've won a lot of awards for it. And yes, it was the right thing to do, but I'm going to be honest, it was a twofold reason, because we also know that it gives us a competitive advantage as a city, because now there's businesses that want to come to us because we are being more inclusive. And so it's definitely a win-win for our residents, for our visitors, and for us. Win-win-win.
Yeah. And I just love the city limitless. I think that's extraordinary, and that extends, of course, to our friends and supporters in the LGBTQ plus community as well. You know, when you visit Mesa, Arizona, you can be who you are, and you can be proud of who you are. You can walk tall with your head held high, or in my case, you can roll tall with your head held high. And Allison's boss, Mark Garcia, just a wonderful guy. I mean, he really puts his money where his mouth is. He doesn't just check a box. He makes sure that he lives through action, and I love that. And I would encourage each of you in your own way, whatever you do, professionally and personally, live through action. And so, you know, Allison, people might be saying, well, you know, Allison, you know, it's the 35th largest city in America. It's a huge suburb of Metro Phoenix. Allison's got more money than she knows what to do with. That's not the case, is it, my friend? Can you talk about how you tackled some of those funding sources, and kind of the piggybacking off of what Sarah said and a little bit of what Jamie said? How do you accomplish everything that you accomplish? And because I really want the takeaway from today to be, this is where I work, this is the community I represent, and this is how I can achieve things on my accessibility focused to-do list. So if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that.
Yeah. You know, in my opinion, there's kind of two buckets. There's the one bucket where you're making physical changes and implementing technology and doing things that do cost money. And those are the ones that you got to go out and you got to find those sponsors. You got to ask for the money. As you said, Brett, like, don't be afraid to ask, keep asking, like Jamie's doing. Like, you got to do it. You got to do the work. And then more that you share your mission. And of course, it has to be an authentic mission. People have to buy in and want to share that vision with you. And that's how you get that money, right? That shared vision for your community. So that's one bucket. But the other bucket to me is all about training and information. And that costs very little. That's why I reached out to Brett in the first place. Is one of the things that is on our list to be doing very shortly is creating videos and workshops with Brett to be able to just bring in our partners for an hour or two and just do training, like etiquette. Like, how do you speak to somebody who's in a wheelchair? How don't you speak to someone who's in a wheelchair? Like, all that stuff about using how the order of your words and all of those things, which is important to me. I know this firsthand. I've worked for some huge companies, and never once did I ever have any kind of training on how to speak to someone with a disability. And here I was, a food server, a person who worked in marketing for a major hotel corporation. I mean, I worked for Airbnb, for God's sake, never once. So it's like, that was just a no-brainer to me, training. And then two is just be able to provide information. As a DMO, our responsibility is, of course, like, let's make sure that we put all that information front and center for people to find it, so that when they're planning their trip, they can get the information they need. And that costs you nothing. It's just a matter of presenting it and do not bury it. It seems like people put this at the bottom of their website, in the third page of a subpage of a third category, like it's like a treasure map. Right, Brett?
Absolutely. And so be proud of it. You know, the city of Mesa has invested a ton of time and money and effort and energy into all the great things that Allison shared with us, and they should be proud of it. And they are. And I want, you know, I traveled pre-COVID. I've been fortunate to travel all over the world talking about this stuff. And I tell everyone who will listen that if you can drive and you're in a wheelchair, there is no better place than Metro Phoenix to live, because it's new, it's flat, you don't have to shovel sunshine, you don't trip on it. I mean, it is awesome, right? And there are some challenges. The biggest question I get outside of travel and outside of tourism is transportation, is helping people get, you know, if you live in Scottsdale and your doctor's in Phoenix, like, and Dial a Ride won't take you there, how do you make it happen? I've spent hours on the phone with people, making sure people get rides to their doctor's appointment. And I don't, you know, that's not what I do professionally, but it is because people feel alone sometimes. People feel, you know, isolated. And so if I can help them get to where they need to go, if Allison can help them through her efforts, let them know that Mesa is a place that respects them. If Sarah can help them, say, hey, come to the state fair. Let's have a day. You know, Jamie, the swing. I mean, it all works together. And so, Laurel, you've been very patient. I appreciate you for that. And I know you're new to the great state of North Carolina, and I really was intrigued and have been intrigued by your background. So we'll talk offline about that. But obviously, you have a passion for this. So just share with us, you know, kind of why do you have a passion for this? Why is this important to you?
You know, I was lucky in just being able to be around people with a lot of varying disabilities growing up. My mom was an audiologist, and so I spent a lot of time with people in the deaf community. So I was usually at events with ASL interpreters. My dad got involved with Special Olympics, and so he worked a lot with that organization. So very young age, you know, you're volunteering, unpacking tables, things like that. And then, you know, got to go to school for this. You know, I thought about special education and all the different therapies, but why not recreate? Why not have fun? You know, the whole you'll never work a day in your life. And so when I found TR, I saw in the chat several TR students and TR professionals. I mean, I think I just lucked into a fantastic profession that has really allowed me to grow and kind of channel at different points in my career, different passions. So, you know, I've been very involved with mental health in a mental health facility, but mental health is everywhere. And so then that's grown into my inclusion, because when you're not in a hospital, you're in parks, you're coming to community recreation centers, and that kind of channels into that. Always been very passionate to ensure that, like, there are ASL interpreters at events. You know, when you go, I love making sure I can see on the television when somebody's speaking that there's an interpreter. You know, closed captioning goes way beyond, you know, nowadays everybody uses closed captioning on the television. That's not just a specific, you know, hearing impaired accommodation. And so I just, for me, I understand that, you know, I have a very high comfort level with people with disabilities. When Jamie was mentioning the language, it's the same thing. You're like, you know, things have changed in my lifetime on how I refer to people. And yes, I have 100% messed up and said the wrong thing. And that luckily has allowed me to grow and change. And I think just anytime I can communicate that to somebody and say, you know, I'm not the master of this. I've never, you know, said I know the only thing. Somebody once got onto me for currently trying to change people experiencing homelessness as opposed to a homeless person. And so, you know, all those things in that language continuously changes. And I think allowing people to see you make mistakes in as comfortable as I am is like, oh, okay, I can make a mistake too. That's okay. And making sure you're visible when you do it. And so that when you're out and about, you know, it's like, oh, okay, well, she's the professional and she made a mistake. It's going to be okay. And that's kind of how I've built my career, just being visible with people, you know, as an able-bodied person, and you know, making sure I'm acknowledging that I am able-bodied, but like what can you do differently to make sure as an able-bodied person that you can test to see if something works. I always laugh and challenge people in an office building. You're like, well, you know, we don't know if it's accessible. How would we ever know? It's like, well, roll your office chair around. Like, can you get into the bathroom in your office chair? Like, is the
Yep.
door too heavy for you? Like, there are ways, just, you know, put on, you know, noise canceling headphones. Like, can you do your
Exactly.
whole job all day with noise canceling headphones on? Like,
It's all about, Laurel, and thank you so much. And it's all about examining life from a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. I have not met a single person in my community, people with disabilities, who expects things to be perfect, because we know it's not going to be. But what we appreciate is the genuine, heartfelt effort, right? Genuine, heartfelt effort. And I think that's what I want the takeaway to be in terms of, you know, practical information that our attendees can take away. Again, you know, the common theme is, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. What advice can you give, Laurel, or would you give? Where to start? Like, what can we do on, you know, 8 a.m. Monday morning? We're jazzed up. We're pumped up about our time together today. Where do we start?
Man, right now, my big push is kind of autism sensory, and Sarah actually, you know, with their chill zone. That's like my biggest push right now. And I'm going to speak, you know, mainly community recreation perspective, but you know, get yourself a little cinch sack or a little backpack or a plastic Tupperware container that you have lying around in storage or in your recreation supplies, and throw in some fidgets, throw in some noise canceling headphones, just things you already have that you know, the little pop-it button things that every child has right now in their backpack. Every kid has it, but they're, you know, kind of a sensory fidget. Label it, make it accessible, put a sticker on it, put it at your front desk. And start, you know, making sure that those kind of pictures are in your marketing. So like, if a child is wearing noise canceling headphones during camp, make sure that picture is in your camp brochure, then have the noise canceling headphones available at the front desk. I mean, noise canceling headphones are $5 at Home Depot. And that's such an easy, you know, hey, now we're sensory friendly. And as you're not going to get to be the Allison, you know, certified autism center overnight, but you can provide a $5 pair of noise canceling headphones. And if they walk out the door and never come back, you can get another pair. But most people who need noise canceling headphones that are coming to a recreation center to watch a basketball game will probably bring their own noise canceling headphones.
Yep.
But you having something, it's the same kind of mindset of, you know, putting your pronouns in your signature. It just makes you seem approachable and accessible for that, you know. So if you have your pronouns in your signature, have, you know, a stand that says I have noise canceling headphones available, so that when they walk in to your front desk, they say, oh, I could check those out, or it's not going to be weird. No one's going to look at me if I put my noise canceling headphones on for your event. I think that's just like a quick overnight thing. And, you know, there's companies out there that will send you, you know, your little cinch sack, but we're Parks and Rec professional tours. This is what we do. We all have these kind of things lying around, and we just need to put them in one bin and say, hey, we do have them, and we'd like you to tell us what to put in it and what you need here.
Yeah, and I love that example of the noise canceling headphones from a Home Depot or a Lowe's or whatever. I mean, you know, we're all familiar with the parable or the story, you know, kid walking down the beach or rolling down the beach in an accessible beach chair, and he's throwing starfish in the ocean, right? And the old salty old man says, hey bud, you're not going to be able to help them all. Right, buddy, but I'm gonna help this one, right? So don't be intimidated by the size and scope of the challenge. Just go get it and come back with it. And you have to decide, you and your organizations have to decide what you're going to go get and what you're going to come back with, right? And that is a perfect example. Alice and I do a lot of great work under the diversity, equity, and inclusion umbrella. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Laurel, is, you know, how did you get buy-in, you know, in terms of inclusiveness, in terms of framing disability, framing autism efforts, et cetera, under the umbrella of DE&I. Would you mind sharing with a little bit with us about that?
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge, honestly. And I think kind of moving from community to community and making sure that the people with disabilities are represented in all communities, you know, so, you know, it's not just white men who are wheelchair users because they have some sort of spinal cord injury. That's a majority of them, but, you know, there are other spinal cord injuries, and who in that community can be visible, you know, in a smaller community. Find those people, find your people who have children with autism, you know, like your boards. You got to look into it. But, you know, if you're going to events for specific disabilities, you know, start asking where people work and kind of move that networking, because you're gonna find the makers and the doers, you know, they're gonna be out and about and they're gonna be loud. But there's always people of all different representations in different communities. You know, there are deaf people of all colors, genders, ages. There are blind, visually impaired people using wheelchairs. It's the easiest minority group to join is a person with disability. You're 1 second away from being a person with a disability. As you age, most people become people with disabilities, whether that's vision or hearing, or mobility, obviously. You know, it's an ever growing minority group, and really sitting down with different stakeholders and explaining, you know, you're a moment away from this, you know, your family, your kids, and personalizing those conversations. But you got to be out doing it. Nobody's going to believe somebody behind a desk, like, you know, me sitting in my, you know, corner office saying, you know, disability is around it, you know, we need to tackle it, you know, we need to include it. You have to be out there, and it can't always just be the same person doing the same preaching. You got to find other people who represent all different groups to be on your advocacy team in your community.
Yeah, no, I mean, very well said. Very well said. Again, it's being purposeful and being and demonstrating commitment through action. Yeah. I think is just the most important takeaway. Thank you for sharing that. And Allison, I wanted to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's the Sunflower program. I think that is spectacular. And before I turn it over to you, the reason that I like that program, and I'll give a little bit away, but the reason I like that program is because it allows people with disabilities that aren't visible to the naked eye to enjoy attractions, to enjoy the city of Mesa without having to say to somebody, hey, you know what, I have a disability, I need help with this, right? You take a Sunflower and it allows you to be who you are without having to explain everything to everybody. And that's why I founded the consumer side of Bread Approved. You know, if I want to book a hotel room, I shouldn't have to spend 20 minutes on the reservation line talking about my life story because I need a roll-in shower. What I want to do is, you know, book a Hyatt place in Atlanta, and I know that I want room 310 because that has a roll-in shower. So I just say, hey, give me room 310. Saves everybody time, right? So anyway, Allison, if you'd regale us, if you would, with the Sunflower program, because I think that's something actionable that people can begin starting almost immediately, at least laying the groundwork.
Yeah, I saw this a few months back at the Travelability Summit, and this program started in the UK at airports where if they distributed these lanyards. They look like, it's kind of hard to see with my virtual background here, but they're bright green and yellow sunflowers. There's a link in the chat box to the program. You can see a little bit better of a picture. But you can wear this lanyard around your neck in the UK when you're in the airport. And if you had a hidden disability, you wear that to designate, I have a hidden disability. And all of the people that you came into contact with that worked at the airport would know that person needs a little extra help, a little extra patience, a little extra care, a little extra time, whatever, just that they have something going on. It's a hidden disability. I can't see it. So they were bringing this over to the United States, and I saw this on the Travelability Summit, and I'm like, well, that's a no-brainer for the city of Mesa. So we adopted the program. These lanyards are now available at the major hotels in our city, attractions, the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, and they're all free of charge for anyone who has a hidden disability, wants to pick one up and want to wear it throughout our city. And we're doing our best to get the word out throughout. It's an It's a challenge. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it magically happened. It's my ongoing effort. I need to like constantly remind our partners and get the word out through our residents, because our residents, as soon as they heard about this program, they were all over it. The mayor went and posted on his social media, and before I knew it, we had residents coming in like crazy, which is a great thing, a great problem to have. But bottom line, you guys could, anyone can participate in this program. These are about $1 a piece landed. So, I mean, I think you could serve 1,000 people for $1,000 in the scheme of things. That's not so bad. So highly suggested. I think this program has been very successful. We're still pretty new to it, but we're loving it so far, and great response.
Yeah, absolutely. And some years ago, I think it was 2019, I actually was at an airport accessibility conference, and I met the gentleman from Gatwick Airport in London who started that program. One of his folks was there. I think it was Gatwick. And so again, that's and really, what does that boil down to? In my mind, again, it's compassion, right? It's just compassion. It's just, somebody needs a little extra time, give it to them. If you're in a hurry, take a minute. If you have a question, if you think, man, I'm intimidated, I don't know what to say or what to do, just ask. Just ask. Think about the importance of making eye contact. Think about the importance of being an active listener, of being present, of demonstrating through your body language that you care about that person, right? I mean, there is nothing more powerful than that. And so that Sunflower program is a great way to start that. And like Allison said, 1,000 lanyards for $1,000. And then, if you need help developing training, there are experts, myself included, shameless plug, who can help you with that, right? And so as I look at our clock, I want to be very respectful of time. We have 6 minutes remaining. And so I want to kind of go around the horn, if you will. And I want each of you to share with me a parting thought that you want attendees to take away from our time together today. Doesn't have to be anything, like an extraordinary pearl of wisdom, but when they think of you, when they think of who you represent, what do you want them to take away? And so, Sarah, we'll start with you.
I think don't be afraid. Do what you can. Community is very understanding, but do what you can, but do what you say you're going to do. So just so the experience is what they're expecting, communicate those expectations so they're not up here and you're about right here. So yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. Laurel.
And I'm available if anybody has any questions or anything. I know Ann is going to give our emails to y'all. So give me a call or an email if there's anything I can do to help you.
Thank you so much. Laurel, what do you got, my friend?
Everybody gets what they need. When somebody comes in, everybody gets what they need. And, for me, I have my fidget. I've been sitting here fidgeting the whole time. People click pens. So when we think about things from a programming aspect, they don't have to be perfect, but what would you need in your own program? And how can we find that need for everybody who comes in our building? But I know what I need to ask for, and when somebody asks for it, then do it, or try it. I think that's the best. It's everything has changed so often, but everybody gets what they need. And if you have that mindset in your space and in your work, I think that will help you go a long way. And it just one at a time, knock them out. Everybody that comes in, that's what the change is going to be. Is
I love it. Allison, what you got for me?
I think you all touched on it a little bit prior, but I want to just reiterate this, is that accessibility can definitely fall under diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And a lot of the times it's forgotten. But the thing is that one common thing is any one of us, regardless of our race, our sex, whatever we identify as, any one of us can become disabled at any moment. And again, we have a lot of us have folks that are getting older, and so we're all touched by disabilities. So when it's time, when push comes to shove and you're trying to sell your idea, regardless of how big or how small, or is 1,000 lanyards for $1,000, or you want to get a whole city certified, or you just want to train some people, it all starts with trying to, I know it can feel very challenging and daunting to try to market or try to get people to buy into your idea. And so I just want to remind everybody that it is so much part of DEI, and that's such a hot topic right now. Everybody's on that. So just a reminder that accessibility definitely falls within that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful, wonderful point. Thank you for reiterating that, Allison. It really is. There are a ton of DE&I focused grants, and it really is an initiative that companies want to get ahead of and be a part of. And so it's our job to capitalize on that momentum and to let them know that yes, this is part of the DEI umbrella. And we're gonna start with this, and we're gonna hold you accountable. We want to make sure that this is the beginning of a movement, a continuation of a movement that, as I shared, was started, in large part by Ed Roberts as he was trying to navigate UC Berkeley and all the work that he did to make my life possible. We are in the midst of a movement, and it takes each of us to do our part. And Jamie, I'm so impressed with you and with your enthusiasm and just the way you attack things. I want to give you final word today, my friend. What do you have for us?
Thank you for giving me a couple extra seconds to think. I appreciate that. So I just want to say, whenever you're working on inclusion, really don't just include it like for one reason. My fellowship night participants are my go-to volunteers, and having that relationship and that ability to say, hey, y'all want to come and flip pancakes or hand out paper plates, that's done a lot to bolster my program. Parting words would be Miss Frizzle: take chances, make mistakes, and get messy.
I love it. I love it. Succinct, to the point. I absolutely love it. And I want to reiterate, Sarah, I just love the way you said it too, very bluntly, very directly. I was a former PIO myself, so I understand a little bit of the nuance of your job, but you said it so wonderfully, Sarah. Doggone it, do what you say you're going to do. If you market an event or anything, do what you say you're going to do. And if you don't think you can do what you're talking about, then don't do it, right? Nobody will know your efforts except for you, right? So do what you can. Be a champion for what you're doing. When you ask for funding, when you go to those people, walk tall, roll tall, tell them they want to be a part of it. And then just sit at the table or sit across a Zoom meeting. Silence is golden, right? Ask somebody for money and then just sit there. They will say something because they get a little freaked out, right? And then as soon as they say something, you got them. You got them. It's not a question of are you going to give money? Are you going to help us do this? It's how much. And as soon as it shifts from are you going to do this to how much, guess what, team? We've won. And that's what this is all about. It's all about doing everything we can to help as many people as possible. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ann.
Right on time, Brett. Wow. And
yeah.
An information-filled section we had. If everybody can do some virtual applause or real round of applause, if you're on the camera, for our panelists and for Brett. I will, as they mentioned, I'll send out their contact information afterward if you have any follow-up questions about programs that they're running, or just thoughts that come up. But yes, thank y'all so much for being here. I know some of you have places to be. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. For the participants, we're going to have a little bit of a debrief just for a couple minutes after this. But thank you, panel.
It's our pleasure. And I'm going to